So the question we're answering now is how to know which lens to recommend. Remember, most clients don't care about every detail of the lens as far as like, they just want to be able to see, right? So like some people will care. You're going to have an engineer that comes in here and he's going to have a question about every detail of the lens.
Yeah.
Most people just want to know that they're going to be able to see in their lenses and that they're going to look good and see clearly. So that's kind of the thing to remember when it comes to lenses, first and foremost. And then the other thing I want you to know is that there's 4 elements to a lens, and we're going to go through each one bit by bit. So the first element is the client's RX. We don't have any control of that. That's determined by a doctor. So just in case, I'll give you the overview just so you know. Someone comes here, or they go to their optometrist or ophthalmologist first, and they get a prescription. That's what's written on that paper that we saw earlier with Greg.
Yeah.
They have that paper, and then they come to us with that. Then we help them select a frame and lens. They can do that at the optometrist. Most optometrists and ophthalmologists have frames and lenses, but they're choosing to come to us mostly because they want something different, something unique, or they want a certain experience.
Yeah.
But they're coming to us with a prescription.
Okay, kind of like how they did earlier. You just take pictures and kind of input everything.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're helping build that lens, but we don't have the one thing that we can't control is the RX, the prescription.
Okay, the RX is a prescription?
Same thing, yeah. RX and prescription are kind of interchangeable terms.
Okay, and one thing, okay. You know, I guess I'll learn that. I was still a little puzzled by like the RX, the sphere, and the cylinder and axis and all that. Okay,
yeah, we'll go through each one of those. Okay. So it's kind of an overview first though. Client's RX.
Yeah.
Material,
which
is what the lens is actually made out of.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go in the details about that. Number 3, design. So this is the style of lens. Coating. This is the thing that prevents scratches and dampens reflection. So you take those 4 elements, and that's what makes up a lens. Okay. Those are the 4 different elements of the lens. You know, it seems pretty simple on the surface, like it's just a lens, but then there's 4 factors to making that lens.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about each of those 4 factors now.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
So the RX is the first thing. So I'm just going to read this off to you. The practice of optometry is defined to be the science and art of examining the human eye and measurement of the powers of vision. I mentioned it earlier, but optometry is both a science and an art. There's some technical knowledge about the eye and the science of how we see, all of those things. That's like a fun path to check out, and like I'm sure at some point you'll probably geek out on the eye and all of that. I love that stuff. But it's truly a science, but then there's an art to it.
Yeah.
So have you ever had your eyes checked?
I have, yes.
Okay. So when you go into that room and they're kind of like taking a look inside of your eye, that's part of the science of it, where they're kind of looking with a slit, they call it a slit lamp. They're looking inside of your eye, checking out the health of your eye. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of the science of it. But when it gets to the art of it, it's, do you see better with this one or better 2? And it's determining what your actual your prescription is. There's some art to it, right? Okay. Your optometrist, you know, has a starting place for your prescription, but then it's like, do you see better here? Does this feel better? And so there's a little bit of an art to it as well. So it's both science and art that's coming up with this prescription. What that means, that helps us understand as an optician, why it matters to us, is that not every prescription is perfect. Yeah. Your prescription can actually change based on the medicine you're taking, your health on that certain day that you go to the optometrist. If you're super, super stressed on a day you go to the optometrist, your prescription can be a little bit different than it would be if you weren't stressed. So there's factors to it, and that's kind of the art side of it. Now, will you see in that prescription? Yes, but there's some wiggle room with that prescription based on your environment and your current health state. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think that's good to know. That's kind of how prescriptions work. We're not responsible for them, but when people come in and talk about their prescription, we have a general knowledge of what the experience is like. Okay.
So lifestyle, health, okay.
Yeah, it can affect all of that. Cool thing about going to optometrists is they can take pictures of the back of the eye, and you can actually know whether someone has diabetes before they even find out based on their eye.
Wow.
You can find out about, obviously, degenerative eye situations, conditions, or lots of different things throughout the body, the eye can kind of uncover some of that.
Wow.
So it's kind of a whole thing when it comes to the medical side of an eye. But what we care about in this context is a prescription.
Okay.
Think about our job as we're basically like pharmacists for a doctor's prescribed RX. So you go to the doctor, you need some medicine, a doctor is writing out a prescription, you're taking it to the pharmacist. In that context, we are the pharmacist for lenses.
Because pharmacists, they just provide the medicine.
Provide the medicine. They might have some advice along the way, like they might have, recommendations, maybe a generic drug versus this other drug, and they're obviously trained in that profession, but they're taking a doctor's prescription and filling it.
But bottom line is we don't do prescriptions.
We
we
don't
don't
write
make
prescriptions.
them.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's a good way to understand, even when you're explaining to someone, it's like, yeah, we're basically like a pharmacist for medicine.
Okay.
We assume the RX, and this is important as we go into opticianry, we assume the RX is correct and do our job 100%. So we're coming into it just going like, those pieces of paper that we saw earlier that the doctor wrote, we're assuming that those prescriptions are correct.
Yeah.
Period. So we're going into it with that assumption. All we're doing is our work. We're doing the measurements. We're making sure we recommend the right lens design, the right material, all of the stuff we're going to get into. But we're assuming that that prescription is right. Is it always right? No.
Yeah.
There's times where it's wrong, but in our minds, we're just going into it assuming that it's right.
And inputting what we have.
Inputting what we have, do our job the best we can. And then if there's a problem down the road with that RX, once we've done all of our work, then we'll address that.
Okay.
That's kind of a separate thing, but as opticians, we're just assuming that it's right.
Okay.
If the client cannot see after we have checked all of our parameters, then we recommend double checking with the RX with the doctor. So that is an option down the road. Once we do everything that we can do to help them see, then we can say, you know what, we've got all the measurements right, all the parameters have been checked out. It might be time for you to go back and see your doctor.
Okay.
A poor optician is going to do that first. They're going to say, oh, you can't see, well, you need to go see your doctor.
Yeah.
As good opticians, we're going to do all of our work and double check all of our parameters, and then we'll send them back to the doctor.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what can we do as far as like, when you say our work, is that like, what can we do before?
Measurements.
Measurements.
Which we'll talk about how to take those measurements. That goes to the pupillometer and that digital measurement of where the pupil sits, what we talked about. So those are some measurements. Recommending the right lens material that they can see out of, and it's going to be lightweight for them. Recommending the right lens design when it comes to their lenses. So those are all in our control. Finding the right frame that is going to be comfortable on them, that is going to adjust so it stays up on their face. If their frame starts slipping like this, they're not going to see the same as if their frame sits like this. So those are the parameters that are in our control.
Okay.
Does that make a little more sense?
Yeah,
And we'll get into some of the measurements and some of those details, but overall, those are the things that are in our power.
Okay, gotcha.
We kind of talked about this already, that fourth part where the necessary correction for a human eye can change based on many factors, including a change of medicine, pregnancy, health issues that you're having. So that's something to be aware of. So let's jump into, so that's kind of the RX portion of it, just so you have clarity on that. Any questions about the RX before we move on to the types of
I think that was
correction?
it.
Okay.